they're fixed on these numbers that are getting more worthless all the time. And the reason it's getting more worthless is because, one, you're printing more of it, but two, you're eliminating a key property of money, which is it has to free flow.
Yes.
If you look at growing economies where people invest, they invest in places where they can move money in and out easily.
Yes.
Nobody wants to invest in a place where there's a big door in and a small door out, because there's risk, there's political risk, there's many reasons you want to be able to move capital in and out quickly. And the growth that we've seen in Asia in the past, I think, is from free flow of capital. And as countries develop, they kind of dial it back and go into a protectionism mode and try to keep what they have. And they don't realize that not having money moving easily is a detriment. But I think that gives opportunity to other countries in the world. If you look at Latin America, you can see they're embracing money. They want money. If you look at El Salvador, what they did by making Bitcoin legal tender, they're saying, bring your Bitcoin and spend it here so that people can earn Bitcoin. And the president there understands that Bitcoin will go up because he is a Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
And then your people will accumulate wealth. They'll be able to send their kids to better schools, create companies, businesses, and grow from there. But if you're just contracting, protecting what you have, you'll decline. And the good counter example to El Salvador, I think, is Japan. You've had decades of stagnation and problems, ballooning debt to GDP ratio, 260 some odd percent. That's completely unsustainable. There's population decline because there's no hope for the future.
That is true.
And it's too expensive to have children now. So what you get is a death spiral. You can't tax the population to generate prosperity. You need to create conditions for prosperity. So many ways.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like Japan is famously very high tax, especially on crypto, right?
Okay, yeah.
So who is going to want to be there to use Bitcoin or anything else to generate money or build a business there, unless you're attacking that market specifically and you have a regulatory moat. But if you're a free market company, why would you domicile in Japan? Why would you hire people there?
You probably won't.
You probably won't.
Yeah.
You'll go somewhere else where it's more favorable. But then they want to tax everything, and eventually it'll just end because you can't get blood from a stone. You can keep squeezing it, but then the people will just suffer.
Usually we assume when there's war, Bitcoin price will go up. With what happened in the Middle East, the price still dropped because it followed the traditional finance market.
Yeah.
So how should we look at it?
Well, it'll follow until it doesn't follow, right? These things are just very sudden. Right now, the bulk of the market seems to think Bitcoin is a tech stock still.
Yeah.
And the ETFs are a double-edged sword. So now Bitcoin is part of the financial system, right? Through exposure by the ETFs. But at the same time, it's not in the financial system. It exists separate from the financial system. But it has this attack surface.
Yeah.
Because it's a portal to legacy money. You have the portal for money to come in, but at the same time, you're now anchored to the stock market. And when stocks go down, people need to rebalance or adjust or top up because they might be on leverage. So in those cases, you want to sell what's in the green still, right? And if you look at Bitcoin since the ETF's launch, it's the best performing probably out of all the basket, right? Things like Nvidia were already down. So a lot of people were probably selling their ETF holdings, and that pushed down Bitcoin. Or they just sold Bitcoin because it was the only market open during the weekend, right? I think if you understand Bitcoin, you understand the fundamentals of the market structure intertwined with Bitcoin, then you understand these are all temporary things. It's very short term. Long term, Bitcoin will keep appreciating to 1 million a coin, to 3 million a coin, to 10 million a coin, etc. But you'll have these challenges in the meantime, and the thing you have to do is look past it and understand what is the market structure and why Bitcoin will follow.
In the future, let's say in 20 years, how many Bitcoin do you need to be seen as doing okay?
I think 1 Bitcoin will be pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not enough for the world population, though.
No, like no one will have 1 Bitcoin.
Really?
it'll probably be, I did the calculation. You have 258,258 Satoshis. That's the distribution if you take 21 million Bitcoin and divide it by 8 million people.
But that's not going to happen.
It will.
Some people will have a lot more.
Well, some people, yeah. So that is the best case scenario, and we know that's already not possible.
Yeah.
So maybe the reality is you might have 10,000 Satoshis, like the poker chip. That's the max
Wow.
people will have.
Wow. Exciting but terrifying.
I think it's just a restoration. If you look at the world today, like, why are we talking about debt in the billions and trillions? That's a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
That's not normal. Again, like, if you go back to the 70s, 60s, you buy a hamburger with 10 cents, you make dollars, you save dollars, and if you have thousands of dollars, you're living a good life, right? And somehow from there, we went to trillions in debt. The US debt right now is 35 trillion, but the total with real liabilities is probably 175 trillion. That's a lot of zeros.
I always wonder, do people actually try to solve that problem, or is it just...
Well, this is the thing. It's all coming to a head. So either they'll default or they have to rebase. And I think they can rebase on Bitcoin. So 35 trillion in debt, you can cover that with 350,000 Bitcoin if you just say, we will pay the debt in Satoshis. So 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. And Trump was on air saying, maybe we give them a little bit of Bitcoin to pay the debt. I don't know if he understood my math and reasoning, but that is generally what's going to happen.
Right.
Because when currencies fail, what do governments do and central banks do? They make a new one.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, now 1 million of this is one of this. So you just say, well, $1 is now 1 Satoshi. And 350,000 Bitcoin pays the debt. Everyone's happy. Or you default. You choose the pain.
I see why you said it might happen 5 to 10 years.
The thing about debt is that interest compounds.
Yeah.
So either you default or you need to print. And if you print, then it becomes worthless. So all the central banks around the world are stuck between a rock and a hard place. So this is why the sooner the countries adopt Bitcoin, the better it will be. Because you can gradually ease into this new financial system built on Bitcoin, rebased on Bitcoin. And the first movers will have the biggest advantage, right? So if Taiwan bought 83,000 Bitcoin today, that's just less than 1% of GDP. But if Bitcoin is at 1 million, you'll need, well, 10x that. You need 10% of GDP.
Do you actually think it's going to go to 1 million?
Yeah.
How long does it take?
I think within the next year. If you're rebasing the entire world's financial system to Bitcoin, that's a lot of things to fill, like 1 Satoshi for $1, right? You have the real estate market. You have derivatives. You have so many things. It's not just M2 money, not just cash and everything else. You're repricing the entire world economy in terms of Bitcoin. So I think 1 Satoshi, $1 is a reasonable end path for everything. But if you think of the number we said, like maybe the average person will have 10,000 Satoshis. Yeah. Right? That's like a good amount of money for someone back when dollars were worth something, right? You have $10,000. That buys you a decent amount of stuff. A house.
Not right now.
No, not right now.
No.
But that's why the money is ending, right? If you look at the past 100 years, from 1924 to now, the dollar has basically gone to zero. So it is happening, but no one is really seeing it. It's just the problem of the frog in the pot. It's boiling, but it's boiling slowly, so the frog doesn't want to jump out. But when you're in Bitcoin, you see the pot because you're outside of that situation, and you see the frog in the pot. So then you understand what's happening. And I think it's our responsibility to try to educate the world about the state of the system and where it's going to end up inevitably.
What is your view on any other crypto except for Bitcoin?
I think it's all a distraction.
Right. So Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that you recognize.
Yeah. So I was at one of the events here last night, and someone asked me, and I just told, like, they said, what is the difference between Bitcoin and crypto? And the difference is anybody can make a crypto project. You can do one.
Yes.
Anybody can make one. Nobody can make Bitcoin again.
Here's the question. So I believe there's a small group of people that know who Satoshi is.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
How is it possible?
Because he was really good at hiding his identity.
Are you Satoshi?
No, I'm
Because
not.
he's pointing at you.
I'm not.
So you don't believe there's someone that know the real identity?
I don't think so. People will guess, but I
Yeah.
don't think anyone can find him through any means. He was very clever at hiding.
So you got attracted or you got into Bitcoin because of this decentralization idea, or
Well, decentralization is a means to an end.
right?
The end that I think a lot of Bitcoiners want is to fix the world. So it's a better place where you don't have a 1984 scenario, right? That we're not tracked like cattle and everything you do and say is monitored. There's really no counter force to that aside from Bitcoin, right? Because technology tends towards centralization. It always is that way. Once you get there, it's hard to break out of it unless there's a very powerful counterforce, which is Bitcoin, which is completely decentralized. So without Bitcoin, there's really no hope. That's why I'm pushing so hard to get Bitcoin adoption and awareness about Bitcoin.
Oh, do you think in the future we will own nothing and just rent?
No, I think people will own things.
Right.
I mean, that's the WEF thing, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
own nothing and be
Yeah.
happy. No, I think if anything, we will have better property rights because I think with Bitcoin, it teaches people again why property rights are important, because you understand that owning something is important, right? And aside from Bitcoin, you can't really own anything else. So you learn that the entire system of property rights and laws to protect property rights is actually very weak. Like again, in Canada, your bank account can be frozen. If you own real estate, it can still be seized. And there's a eminent domain or appropriation. So if the government wants your land, they can technically force you to sell it. So I think, if anything, Bitcoin will increase property rights across the board. It probably won't happen in the next 5 years, but in 20, 30 years, we should see the respect of property rights permeate through the legacy system.
You're trying to push Bitcoin adoption through the government, but the end game is everyone using Bitcoin. How do you actually get everyone on board? Is it a wallet? There are countries where people don't have a smartphone yet. So like how exactly is that going to happen?
That's why we're building Aqua. So that's another piece of the puzzle, which is creating a very accessible wallet that anybody can use, that we can hide a lot of the complexity. So if you want to just send Bitcoin, it just works. There's no complexity with things like channel management. If you're using Lightning Network, you don't need to set up a Lightning node. We can do swaps to pay Lightning invoices. We're incorporating Tether into Aqua as well, because we see that as a vehicle to onboard a lot of people to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So in the global south, most of the people there are trying to protect their wealth, their savings, and they're doing that by using USDT. And maybe there's 100 million people doing that, but they're not into Bitcoin because they don't understand that. But they did seek out Tether,
Yeah.
and they are using Tether for everyday purchases, just living life. So it's become their digital dollar. And I think what we can do with Aqua is bridge them into Bitcoin, because most of the wallets that are powering stablecoins, they have their own altcoin chain, right?
Yeah.
Either Ethereum, Tron, or whatever. But with Aqua, it's all Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin and Liquid. So it's a Bitcoin and a side chain. So we can get them into the Bitcoin ecosystem that way. At least that's the hope.
Does it look like an app? Like I'm trying to visualize how to get everybody, like my grandma who's like 80, to be on board. Like, is it gonna look like an app?
Yeah.
That you scan, or
it's just
Apple Pay?
Yeah. Well, it'll be using QR codes or Lightning addresses, but you'll be able to just ask your grandma for her Lightning address and send Bitcoin to her that way.
Does that take a lot of education though?
Well, I think there's still a lot of UI work to be done, but we can make it far smoother and simpler for the mass market. Because right now, I think most Bitcoin wallets don't really seem to be targeting the next billion people. They're building something for people that are already in Bitcoin and are already advanced users. Whereas for us, we want to make it so easy for people to use this. It just makes sense and they understand it and it just works.